What's up, everybody? Welcome. Today is Sunday, November 18, 2018. If you're tuning in right now, that means you're some of our first folks, or if you're watching this on delay, you get to check this out as well. This is a cool day. We haven't done this in about a year. We're doing a live IQ test with the great Sean Yee. Welcome, Sean.
What's up, guys?
So,
Thanks for having me, Matt.
hey, chilling, man. Good to have you here as we get ready for Thanksgiving break. So, one of the cool things about IQ, and we're going to dive into this a little bit. What you guys are going to see right now is we're going to get to see Sean for the next half hour prepare for the IQ test, which is, I think, a huge part. And we'll talk about that a little bit, the process to get to taking the test. And then in about 30 minutes, we're going to get to see Sean, and it's the most raw reality TV out there. There's no cuts. He's going to take everything. He's going to play each exercise twice, and he's going to play the piece once, which is going to be somewhat nerve-wracking, but we'll talk about later on how his experience, how this has helped benefit him in his marching career. So talking about his marching career, Sean, why don't you share what are some of the places that you've marched, a little bit of your background?
Okay, cool. So my marching experience includes, so it started off at Ayala High School. I've marched there from fall of 2011, graduated in 2015. And then the summer coming out of 2015, I spent with the Blue Stars, and then took a little bit of a break. I actually came back and marched at RCC 2017, then switched over to Broken City for 2018, and then just this past summer for DCI 2018, I spent my age out summer with the Blue Knights. And now I'm back for Broken City 2019 as an age out, so yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, that's cool. That's real cool. One of the cool things about Sean with his relationship with Percussion IQ. So Percussion IQ launched in the September of 2016 now, so been around a little over 2 years. Sean was one of my students back in the summer of 2016, and he helped develop the IQ test, and a lot of people don't know that. So myself and John McLean, I'm Matt Regua, we developed some of the IQ test stuff based on some of the lessons we were doing with Sean in his preparation for Blue Knights and RCC and everywhere that he wanted to go, where he'd come into this exact studio that we're in today and play a bunch of different things. We'd really throw the full gambit at him, give him scores, try to give a quantitative look at his performance to help prepare him for when he had to go into those individual auditions. To give a little bit of feedback of the IQ test before we get into his preparation, one of the cool things about, I think, the IQ test, and especially if you're newer to learning what the heck is Percussion IQ, the whole purpose of it is try to drum smart. And what we do here is we want to watch individuals play and grade individuals like you would score a drum line. So anybody that's watching this, you're probably in a drum line before. You've probably been judged, whether that's in DCI, that's your field, your high school group, maybe your indoor group that you're in. You get judged in your GE, your music, your visual effect. Everything is out there that you get judged on. Well, one of the concepts we thought about was, well, we're getting to a level in this activity where you could watch Broken Sea, you could watch Rhythm X, you could watch the Blue Devils, Cavaliers, Crown, whoever it is. You can watch those players and all the demand that they're doing with their bodies and the formations that they're in. It's difficult to go back to the mentality of listen in and blend. You need to be ready to be the prominent voice that people are trusting no matter where you're at in the form. And when you're switching your angles and everything you're doing, you need to make sure your sound is money. And so one of the ideas for IQ was we're going to develop such a difficult test that almost nobody could play it perfect, because if you can master this, hopefully when you show up to whatever audition you're doing and you have to add all that extra simultaneous demand, you're ready for that demand because your hands are so prompted and primed with what you're doing, and you're working on things sometimes much more difficult than maybe the music is for that group. And I think Sean could attest to that. The stuff that's in the IQ test is difficult for a reason, because if you could master those shifts, man, it's the potential of where you could go like Sean is pretty crazy. Okay, so what we're gonna do right now is, as we're going through this live display of his preparation and then his performance, send any questions you have over, whether that's to me about just the why we're doing things through the IQ way, whether that's Sean, how he handled his poise, or any questions about for him specifically to any of the exercises or the piece, how he prepared for that. We'll, at the end of this segment of this live stream, we'll get him to answer some of those questions as well. So send them over and we'll get to as many of those as possible. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transition a little bit to where we'll get to see Sean's prep, and I'm going to ask him a couple questions. He's going to drum a couple things and give his feedback on each exercise, on the piece, what he did to master each of those things. And then for about 5:50 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we get to see Sean the way his brain gets ready to go into taking the IQ test, I'll leave the room and you guys get to see up close and personal how a world-class snare drummer gets ready for all these eyes about to watch him, as if you're going into a room and you have Mike Jackson, Roger Carter, Paul Rennick, Scott Johnson watching you. You are those faces getting to watch him in this instance, and you get to see how a world-class player prepares for that. Cool, so let's transition a little bit. So, Sean, let's talk about exercise number 1. Mm-hmm. Cool, so why don't let's see a little bit how you prepared for exercise number 1, and then you could talk through any advice you gave or any bottlenecks that you had to overcome to master this one.
Okay. So I think breaking down the primer, in terms of this exercise where there's an overall skeleton to it, it's basically... I think getting that check pattern and making sure that the timing's there, making sure like you're playing with a really nice touch, like super legato, make sure the transitions are all smooth, making sure you're hitting good checkpoints. Like that's a checkpoint right there. And then making sure you keep that when you go into some of those patterns. Like we got some single fives. I think the exercise is single fives, 5-stroke rolls, and then inverted fives. So I just pretty much made up a primer, playing it all on piano just to realize the control and the amount needed. And that way, I guess for me, playing it up would be a lot more easier. That way I could relax a little bit more. Yeah. So.
So right there, did you took some of the elements of the exercise, mm-hmm. and you elongated some of those patterns, whether mm-hmm. it was 5 strokes, inverted fives, yeah. which is a very difficult. I mean, you did almost like a halfway rule 16. You did mm-hmm. You did the rudiment 8 times, yeah. And as you switched it, and you're doing it at the low end, like you were saying, to mount your control. So when we do take it all up, and it's supposed to be played all up, so. Jacob Little, you didn't do it right, and your other one, right? But that's okay. We're going to go all up. If you could play it in that control at piano, I'm sure it's a lot more helpful there.
Yeah, definitely. The amount of like muscle control and like the mechanics needed for that level of control, like it takes a lot more control if you're traveling only this much distance. Like you're going to feel like you're doing a little bit less work than you should be, as in comparison to playing it all up. So it's kind of interesting. I've followed some of the Percussion IQ blogs, and they always one of the big topics that they always mention is rule of 16. So if you could play take any phrase, any rudiment, play it like 16 or maybe even more than that. That way, playing 4, if you could get to playing 16, like with every 16 of those phrases all consistent, then playing 4 would be
cake.
Yeah, second nature.
What's cool too is, and we'll get to it, is I think assessment number 5 these days when we do the IQ music, which comes out every 4 months, we drop new music in, so there'll be a new one coming January 2019. The assessment 5 is a rule of 16, and what we try to do is we take a rudiment from the piece. In this case, I'm going to jump in for a second. We got this guy. Those guys in there, which is assessment number 5, where that's a difficult rudiment with the flam, and then you have the 7-stroke underneath it, and you're alternating right to left hand to do 16 counts of that to the best of your potential, right? To get as clear and consistent, to make sure your motion is consistent as possible. We'll talk about that in a second. So let's jump a little bit then. So number 2, we're working on some of those double strokes. I don't know if you want to talk about how you broke down, if you want to play anything. What's
So this is a primer that I found pretty useful, because if you think about it, it's pretty much triplet partials, like the standard triplet partial, followed by like a 4th bar phrase, which we'll elaborate on later. So that's played at 200, and it's very, very easy for the 3rd bar to get lost in the downbeat, like trying to feel that foot on the ground, like if you're marking time, like the first 2 patterns, like you're playing a note exactly on the foot, and I feel like it's a lot easier to feel it that way, like because you're hitting a note right on your foot. But for the 3rd pattern, you kind of like, oh shoot, where's the downbeat? Like you kind of get lost in that, especially if you're playing at 200. So this is an exercise that this is like a primer that I sort of came up with, playing it all at piano. Basically playing the first 8 bars all low, but filled in. So if we have pretty much filling in with the left hand. And that way you kind of get a feel of like what it's supposed to sound like, but at the same time what it's supposed to feel like in terms of like rhythmic interpretation and how it lines up with the downbeat. Also worth mentioning, the end. Got some modulated from triplets to 16th note diddles. I, again, like for assessment 1, kind of broke it down in like a rule of 16 fashion. So I play like how many bars, I don't even know how many counts I played it, but pretty much. Pretty much like, again, rule of 16. If you can treat it as like a 4-2-1 sequence, and seeing how consistent can you line up every single note and every single transition, to where if you actually play the piece, then you only do it like 4 times compared to the 16 you try and get perfect. It's gonna, again, feel like second nature.
Yeah, and I noticed what you did right there is you basically did a 4-2-1. You could grid anything. You could grid any parts of your music. If there's certain patterns that you want to look at, to Sean's point, take it for longer periods of time, then you condense it into maybe phrases of 2 down to almost the part, and at the end you almost did the tag of adding the shaping as in the end of the exercise. So you brought it full circle. One of the cool things we were talking about before we started the live stream is the piece that a lot of you guys are learning right now, the IQ piece for period 3 2018. It's challenging, and so what we do is we make all these different assessment 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are a breakdown of that piece. Well, Sean took it one step further, and he's breaking down each exercise and making primers for the exercises, taking it down to its most elemental form, like the base of a pyramid, and making sure his foundation's strong. And then he works up to the exercise, and then he works up to the piece. It's like almost Inception with drumming, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, like dream within a dream. We're primer within a primer to ultimately build the chops and the consistency to get to, the end goal of being able to play that difficult piece, but doing it with ease and poise and motion. Let's talk about, let's keep going. Exercise number 3 gets a little challenging here.
So we got some paradiddle vocabulary in there. Starts off with like, first couple bars, just singles and diddles. I mean, if you kind of think about it, that's what paradiddles really are. It's just a combination of singles and diddles. So whatever combination you can think of. So the first bar I feel like preps us off pretty well. And then using kind of the muscle control that you need to play this part well, making sure you have the correct fulcrum pressure. Like, what is this supposed to feel like? Like, what's the pressure distribution like from my right to left hand? Are my right hand and left hand like super balanced? And then kind of using that foundation to get through some of the paradiddle vocabulary. So we got right there. I kind of try and for those inverted kicks, like those accents, I kind of try and bring those out as much as possible, like making sure I really do the work to bring those accents up. Because when I get to the actual pattern, which is ultimately like the end goal being like the last bar, I'll kind of slow that down. That's what you're really prepping for. And when I was learning this, it's kind of funny. When I was learning this, I was like, this is really, really hard. Because it takes a lot of muscle control to play something like this. Like you have one count of singles going into the paradiddle, and then the fulcrum pressure or the kind of gear shift that you need to transition from singles to diddles. I found that pretty challenging. On top of like adding that inverted kick.
Yeah, I think at the end of exercise number 3 is like a gem with those singles and paradiddles, like almost you were saying it's almost like a twist on the triple paradiddle, and it's a different type of control, especially when we're going from a legato single strokes, and then we're going into our double strokes with accents within that, right? Yeah. So you were working on, as like we were talking 5 minutes ago, you were working on a breakdown of doing those paradiddle, that last bar. What was that you were hitting?
So I broke this, okay, and don't forget too, break this down at a slower tempo.
Sure.
That's more, that I'm sure like everybody says that, but it's super, super important, especially since the assessment's all at 200 beats per minute. So I came up with a little exercise for the first bar, just to help me kind of relax my touch a little bit. So what I pretty much did is I took out all the 16th note components and then kind of layered in 16th note partials. So I started off with, that's the last bar of assessment 3, pretty much without 16th notes. So if you take out every offset 16th note partial, that's what you have. And then after that, after playing 16 of those, maybe add in the first count of singles. And then maybe after that, I tried to see what I could do, like how I could have broken it down. Maybe you can have like that second count we have the paradiddle, maybe just playing the para part of it. And then maybe removing that and then adding the diddle of the paradiddle. And essentially it just came down to this primer that I used to kind of relax my touch a little bit, especially with all those inverts and fulcrum pressure changes.
Great breakdown. Cool. And I think one of the challenging things in that assessment piece would be you're going from that last left-right double to that last other double and then going into singles right after that. Make sure you're not crimping and pinching off your diddle too much. So we got a couple more minutes to talk about like how you prep for each piece. I think we hit 1, 2, 3. We actually hit 5. We've talked enough about Rule 16, and that's just breaking down that flam movement. It's almost like a flam drag, but you're doing a 7-stroke. Exercise number 4. This will be the last one before we let you really get your head ready. What'd you do for exercise 4?
So this one consists of a lot of fulcrum pressure changes because of rolls, different types of rolls. Like there's a huge 5-lit roll, decrescendo 5-lit roll, some different groupings of 2-count triplet rolls. And like any sort of roll exercise, a good idea would be to play the check first, because I kind of think about playing rolls in like you have a sort of checklist of 4 things that will help you succeed in playing rolls, especially in a line setting. First part is obviously like play the check in time. Like the first bar goes like this. If you have any buzzes in there or diddles in there, just take them out. See how your triplet timing is. And then maybe played, again, a rule of 16, maybe first count of check, 8th note check, and then buzzes. Same thing with the rolls. And then, again, checking the 5s. Yeah, that whole thing. And there's a middle section in there which I found pretty challenging, and I would usually like flub that. It's when we have those inverts, making sure it's super hard to actually make that fast of a shift coming off a triplet roll at 200. So what I did is I came up again with another primer to help me focus on the gear shift in my left hand. And making sure I hit that checkpoint on count 2. Again, it's not on the foot, so it's kind of hard to get that syncopated passage along with the feet. Kind of, yeah, it's pretty challenging because it's not a typical grouping that you would see, especially with the sticking too. I think the sticking, and that's a good point to mention. I think the rhythms in there is not so much complicated as much as the sticking, because you can change the sticking and it completely changes the amount of pressure or gear shifts that you actually need to implement in playing some of this stuff.
Cool. Thanks, Sean. So what we'll do is all great information. If you haven't got a chance to download the music and take a look at it and kind of follow along with what he broke down in each of the assessments to get to the actual IQ test, you can head to our website. You put in your, you go to IQ Music, you put in your email address, and automatically as soon as you submit that, the email usually comes in within 5 minutes. We'll have a PDF that has all the music kind of broken down on one page, the exercises, and the other page has the actual piece. Okay. What we're gonna do now is, if you're just tuning in, this is Sean Yee, world-class snare drummer, about to take a live IQ test. And traditionally, when you do an IQ test, if you submit one through the website, you're gonna go through the store option, and then you're gonna submit your recording, and then our Percussion IQ team, at least 3 or 4 of us, are gonna review that video over a week, and we break things down, and then you get a full-on 7-page report of your performance, ranging from getting a score for each thing and identifying 2 to 3 major issues for each exercise. Then we have a page on countermeasures. How can you fix those issues? What are some suggestions from us when it comes to exercises or primers to break it down? Then we have a chart to show, what most of your issues were tempo based and maybe rhythm based, and you're able to actually gauge and see, oh wow, this is a visual representation of what my major issues are. I could spend 80% of my time on that. The last thing would be being able to compare against someone like Sean Yee, where you see his scores on how he did on everything. And if you're 16 and you're in Mississippi and you're taking this IQ test, you might want to know, hey, how do I compare in the eyes of the IQ team against someone like Sean Yee, who's marched Broken City, Blue Knights, Blue Stars, Ayala, and RCC? Cool. So that's the benefits of the IQ test. What we're going to do right now is he's going to take about 10 minutes to get his mind ready. I'm going to leave the room for what he needs to do to prepare. I'm going to come back in. He's going to do 2 reps of every exercise, and he's going to do the piece once. All uncut, one take. If things happen, things happen. That's what live raw TV is. He's nervous. I'm nervous. I think you're nervous watching him, but it's cool, right? And this is one of the cool things is the whole world, get to see his live IQ, and I'm actually going to be watching behind, taking notes so he could get his full report and video commentary after the test, because he's still working on getting better, even though he's about to age out and be an old man. So without further ado, we're going to start the live IQ at 6 o'clock. Sean, whatever you need to do, if you want to drum, turn on the Met, talk more, whatever you want to do, you got until 6 o'clock, and then we're going live.
All right, sounds good. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. Well, it's time. It's 6 o'clock. So for those watching, what we're gonna do right now is to reiterate, if you just joined, Sean just spent the last 30 minutes with myself, Matt Regua, just kind of breaking down each of the assessment pieces and how he focused on certain difficult parts within those exercises, and how he identified them through some of those primers he was just doing right now to get ready for the actual IQ test. So what's going to happen now is when you do an IQ test, you play each of the 5 assessments, you do 2 reps. And then you switch gears, you get ready to, oh, that's a weird noise. You're going to do 2 reps of each assessment, and then we're going to go into the actual piece, which he'll do 1 rep, and then that'll be the whole thing, and then we'll be able to answer any questions and kind of just talk through the process after that. Okay, the Met will be on the entire time. After this is his 1 run. So one of the cool things is if you submit an IQ test, you could record yourself on your phone. You could do it like 30 times, right? Because IQ test totally is maybe 2 to 3 minutes long total. And so you can find, hey, this is my best one that I want Matt Regua, John McLean, Darren Vanderbilt, all the guys that are part of the IQ team to review and give you my score. When you do a live IQ, there's a big challenge, right? Big risk, big reward, right? He's the second ever to do this. All eyes on him. This is reality TV to the max. We'll see how he does. He's going to do his best if he messes up just to jump right back in and keep going. I'm confident in this cat of what he's able to do and just show what he's able to. You ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, man. Here we go. Sean Yee doing the Period 3 2018 IQ test.
Going? All right. sweaty.
2 up. Holy crap. Wow. So, it's intense. Let's talk through it a little bit before we go to some questions. Because I get the pleasure of being behind the camera to even add to the stress on top of it as one of his like former instructors, knowing he only has a couple takes. You know, when you do it live like that, things go wrong. Like in any show, anything you're ever in. I'll give you a funny story. I love Broken City's 2018 production. I saw you towards the end not almost get your drum on. Or something like that. And you stayed calm, you got your drum, pulled the sticks out and came out on the bus. I saw it, I was like, dang, but you were calm on that. What do you guys say on that?
So, yeah, that actually happened finals night. So, you know how Broken City's uniform has the straps on the right arm?
Yeah.
Mine came undone, and I was like, shoot. And it was like, you can see, there's footage of it, like where we have we play like a piano roll at the edge, and you could see a part of the strap dangling down from the stick, and it's like, oh shoot, I gotta fix this. Like, this is not good. Yeah. And that quad break, where we're doing some body on the floor, I was like, dude, this is my only chance. I was like, so we're all laying down like the body's doing it, and I'm just like, I have to wrap it up. I was like, okay, please, 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 please. And then it was fine. Yeah, I think what is cool is like, there's gonna be any show you're ever in, you're gonna have to overcome some adversity, right? And I thought your first rep, you were so nervous. You know, you struggled on like some 5 strokes. It wasn't even the inverted 5s. Yeah. It was like straight up 5 strokes. You know, take a deep breath because you know, oh crap, I'm only 5% in. I got a lot more to go. Yeah. Right? And then you hit your stick or something on the rule 16 on like the 15th count. But you still had another rep, and you nailed it the second rep. And I think that's something that's so important, you know, from an instructor point of view. But when I watch students, just to see your level of endurance and that you were gonna overcome those issues, right? It's very difficult when we go live to be able to play all this music. It's tough. This is some of the beefiest music out there, I think. You know, I don't know. Maybe there's I'm sure there's other stuff that's hard, but to do it 2 reps live like that, everything. You said something to me when we were setting up this date a week or 2 ago that I wanted to get your feedback a little further on. You said, this is the ultimate challenge. What do you mean by that? So, okay, I gotta find the right words. So when I said over a little bit this way. Okay. Yeah. So when I said about like the ultimate challenge, I think I meant due to the fact that there's not going to be an instant in the activity where you're going to feel the most pressure, and I think that's what the IQ test is for percussion IQ. Like pretty much it's just you by yourself. And I kind of feel like that's good for you in a way, like good for most players, because when you're playing in a line setting or just in the line setting, you have lots of other variables to worry about, like probably like for the top 12, like an 8-man, 9-man snare line for this application. We have those variables to worry about, but for this, you just have yourself, like you're fully exposed. I feel like doing this kind of, in a way, reveals your true colors. Like that amount of pressure that you're gonna feel is going to make everything else feel a little bit easier. At least that's the effect that it had on myself. Like auditioning for other groups out there, playing stuff down the line and seeing like what was good in it and then what wasn't. I feel like it does expose like your true colors, like if you're like exposed to that amount of pressure. And that's kind of the pressure that it's not only gonna be existent when you're doing this, it's when auditions in general, like if you're auditioning by yourself, if you're playing like down the line or like, and you're just in a room with like one of the caption heads who's like judging you, you know, that same amount of pressure I feel like is for you to prep when you're actually going to be out on the field, like maybe finals night, like it's either there or it's not, like 100%. That's like, that puts a lot of pressure as like on me as a performer and as well as everybody else. I think I could speak for a lot of people out there.
Cool. Well, let me ask a couple short answer questions. What was the hardest thing about the live IQ? Was it the nerves? Was it was it part of the music? Was it the room, the lights? What was it? What was the one thing?
Everything.
Oh, everything. Okay.
Yeah, definitely the music is probably some of the most challenging music I've ever played, ever. And to do that, not in a line setting, but like here by myself with a Met to check my rhythms and such, like having me fully exposed. There's that aspect, and also the fact that we have a bunch of people watching.
Yeah.
That adds to the pressures. Like,
Yeah.
you're always gonna. I hate to say this, but you're always gonna get the vibe from other people's like, oh, don't screw up, don't screw up.
Yeah, sure.
And kind of knowing that, I know it shouldn't play that much into a factor,
Yeah.
but it subconsciously does.
Yeah.
And
Well, you're an aggressive guy by nature, just the way you perform. I mean, almost every picture we have of you on social media is you're an intense dude, and that's what I love about it is when you going into any audition. What I loved about what you were doing right now, with everybody watching, you doing the IQ test. After every rep, you're taking a deep breath. You're getting your mind right. I watched you bring your sticks up. Your hands were like relaxed. You weren't shaking. You were just taking deep breaths, and then you went into it, and you trusted your habits.
Yeah.
You knew the process. You trusted your habits, and you moved forward with that. I thought that was pretty cool about it. Let me ask this: another quick question. Of all the exercises, which one was the hardest? Just for my own feedback.
I would say assessment 2.
The
triplet partial. Like, I looked at the first 4 bars. I remember when I downloaded the music and looked at that assessment piece.
Yeah.
Or the assessment number 2.
Yeah.
I saw, like, okay, first 4 bars, we have classic triplet partials.
Yeah.
With the, like, I looked at that 3rd bar with only the 2nd and 3rd partial. I was like, reminding myself, this is at 200.
Yeah, we're not in like 160 world, Like,
yeah,
it goes by quick on the downbeat, right?
Uh-huh.
I loved about when you were doing the IQ test too. You moved your feet. You were lifting your feet off the ground heavy. I mean, I got to see a ground view. It's hard to see on the live stream, but I got to see you were pushing so hard in my studio to feel that downbeat, especially on the 3rd partial, to help you get ready for that kind of that alternated Swiss part, right?
It was a must.
Yeah, that was cool.
That's a must.
Let me ask you another question. What would you say are the similarities between what you just did with a live audition? You kind of allude to it, maybe a couple short sentences of being specific. What was similar about this with a live audition, and what's different? What's completely different, if anything, that you can feel? And if you don't have anything, I know I'm throwing you on the spot, but what would you say? Because I know a lot of people out there, they don't know what it's like to go in front of Paul Rank, Scott Johnson, Rick Barclay, all these top dudes when they want to make a group. And you just did this on a live IQ test, and I think you defeated it. I think you killed it. I think you're gonna break 90, get your black wristband and all that. What were some of the similarities, and then we go to the differences?
So I'll start off with what's similar.
Yeah.
Pretty much, when you go, like, picture this.
Scoot a little bit so the light, yeah.
Okay.
You're good.
So picture this. You are auditioning for one of the top 12 cores, whatever it may be, and then it's gonna happen eventually. Like, you go into, like, a room, and the only people there are you, and then whoever is evaluating you. That's it. And for, like, a certain amount of time, what you produce on that drum is there for whoever's evaluating you to determine whether or not you pretty much have a spot. As well, there are other variables,
Sure.
but this is one of the main things, like, what can you do? And specifically, what can you do in a pressurized setting? And it's different for everybody. Like, most educators out there want you to be as comfortable as possible.
Sure.
With, like, not feeling as much pressure. It's like, okay, it's all good, just relax. Like, we want you to play as though, like, no pressure's on you, as comfortable as possible. And then other people, I've definitely worked with in the past or marched under, they want to see, like, if they can, it's kind of, how should I explain this? It's kind of weird for the fact, like, it's almost like they want to see you, like, crack under pressure. Like, how well are you going to, like, if you make a mistake, like playing whatever it is down the line, as perfect as possible, like, how well can you recover from that?
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty important too, like, mistakes, like, just the act of, like, being, like, a professional in this activity is, like, sure, you want everything to be perfect, but, we're human, and things won't always go the way you want them to.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of, okay, like, you're a professional performer and musician. How well can you recover as if nobody caught that mistake at all?
Yeah, and you did, I think, in your IQ test a lot. One thing cool about, Sean's background, and we talked a little bit about it. He's going to be graduating from UCLA this June in mechanical engineering. And as an engineer, you're always trying to find the root cause of issues. You're focused on the process, sometimes versus the product. And one thing I loved about what you did, and when we set this up with Sean, I told him, do whatever you need to do to take the IQ test to be as comfortable as possible. I was unaware you put primers on primers, right? But I'm not surprised. And the other thing I loved is you rarely actually worked on the piece. The only time you hit the piece was really in the IQ test. I'm saying right during this time, right?
Yeah.
Even when I was watching the other room for your 10-minute prep before we started, the actual live, doing the actual IQ test for the 2-minute IQ test, you were working on really exercise 1, 2, and 3 quite a bit. And it felt like you were trusting the process of building the habits, the right habits in the hand, through all those primers you put together, through the assessment exercises, because you knew if you could do it in those exercises, which sometimes were harder than sections of the piece, you knew that you were going to be good on the piece, because you didn't hit the piece a lot. And maybe that, we're going to close soon, but why is that? Why didn't you hit the piece as much as maybe some of the other things?
Okay. This is kind of actually a little bit funny. It's because I pretty much wanted to focus on, well, here's the main thing. I know that these 5 assessments in preparation for the piece are there to think of it as like a breakdown of the piece, pretty much. Yeah. Like if this were, imagine if the showpiece, okay, I kind of gave it away, but imagine if the assessment piece was something you played in the show. It could be like
a snare feature.
Exactly, like a snare feature, whole battery feature, whatever. And basically you have many ways to clean that, and then those 5 primers that you might play in rehearsal or the lot, that's just to get you ready or build muscle memory when you actually go to the assessment piece in like a WGI show type setting.
Yeah, makes sense. That's cool. Yeah, I like that. I thought you were real confident when you got to the piece. You just like you said, you had your hands were primed up, ready to go for that guy.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we're gonna come to a close right now. If you haven't got a chance to download that music, take a look at it. It develops you for that piece, and if you could handle that the way Sean did, it's gonna be pretty promising. Any final thoughts from you before we cut off?
I'm glad I did this.
Yeah.
I'm really, really glad I did this, even though it's kind of one of those things where when you're in the moment, it's like, oh, dude, why did I sign up for this? Like, it's very, very nerve-wracking.
Sure.
But I'm kind of, as like you're talking to everybody out there, I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, this was really beneficial for me.
Well, I feel like, to end on that note, it's a lot of people think the end of the road is making a top 12 group, right? And you made that years ago. You marched in one of the top high schools in the world with Ayala, and then you moved on and you continue to do independent world groups and DCI world class groups, but you stayed humble through it all. And we mean it when we say you be humble, and you'd be hungry, though, because we all could get better. And even though you're going to be 22 in a few months, you only got 5 months left in your career, for you to still come in here, let the world see you, and you say, yeah, I got better off this. I'm going to keep getting better. How you're going to strain your own individual potential to be as great as you can be is what this is all about. So if you're in the top group, or you think you're in the top group, this something like this IQ test is still a challenge, because it brings humility because how difficult it is. And if you're just getting into the drumming scene, we have the fundamental IQ, and then if you want to challenge yourself and push yourself, you can take the IQ test as well. And I think that's one of the most important parts of this overall process. I'm proud of you. I'm so thankful that you came here today to do this.
Yeah.
We both knew that it wasn't going to be perfect, and that's a part of the reality TV of, I love everything I see on Facebook and Instagram of all the drumming videos, but there's just something special about rawness where we do make mistakes, and we just got to see a genuine performance and see your recoveries through that, because that's what it's really like on the line. And sometimes you're doing those 8-hour, 10-hour days on the field, and you're going to make mistakes, and if your instructor's yelling at you and you get frustrated, take Sean's advice of he just took a deep breath, he kept going with it, and just knew it's not going to be perfect, but if I continue to work on the habits, right, work on whatever I need to do to get the habits right to be successful, that's what we saw. And it was still, he's probably still a little disappointed with this piece, right, with the performance, but there's other people out there right now that are dropping their jaw, and there's probably less than 1% of the drummers willing to do a live one. And to the last point, if you want to do a live one, and I'm talking to you guys that are in your top 5 groups, independent world, for WGI and DCI, you can message Percussion IQ. We would love to be able to set up a live stream as well and show the world that even the strongest players are overcoming things. We're always getting better. We're staying humble. We're staying hungry. Cool. Sean, appreciate everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Best of luck with Broken City this next season.
Yeah.
Proud of you. Everybody else, we're going to drop off. You'll be able to continue to watch us on the Facebook page. We'll throw it on our YouTube page. We'll probably cut up some clips and put it on Instagram. And now I need to get to work to put together his report with the rest of the IQ team, his verbal commentary, and that way you keep being better.
Awesome.
We're signing out. This is Matt Regla, Sean Yee. Thanks for joining us. Take care, guys.